And maybe it was simply what happens when people are young and open and optimistic and willing to do something kind for a complete stranger. But that kindness changed the trajectory of my life. Welcome to the Ambition Code. I'm Julie Kellman Reading. The Ambition Code is a deeply personal passion project for me because I've always believed that part of my purpose in this world was to illuminate people's stories, but our experiences only become truly useful when we are willing to share them. And before I ask other people to tell me about their Ambition Code, I think it's important that I tell you mine. So today I'm taking you back to the very beginning of my career, or what I've always called the beginning. Years ago, my friend Katie Lotz helped create an incredible digital community called She Authority, where women could share their experiences and help empower other women. Honestly, she was way ahead of the curve at the time. This was like 8 years ago, and she asked me to write an essay about how I became a producer. She didn't give me many rules. She simply asked me to tell my story and leave the reader with something meaningful that helped empower them. So I put my other projects aside, I wrote the essay, and I called it Your Life is Waiting for You, A Guide to Running Through Open Doors, which is the inspiration for this podcast. At the time, I thought I was writing it for young women who were about to graduate from college and enter the working world. But now I understand that the message is so much bigger than that, because the beginning does not only happen once. It can happen when you graduate. It can happen when you change careers. It can happen decades into your life that you've already built. And it can also happen after a success or a loss. Sometimes you're waiting for it for years, and other times it happens before you're ready. And sometimes you don't even recognize that it's happened until much later. My beginning started in a very boring college classroom. I was desperate to get out into the world because I had wanted to be an adult and live on my own since I was about 16, despite having the most excellent family and absolutely no applicable life experience that would have allowed me to do that successfully. My parents insisted, however, that I go to college and I finish first. Thank you, Mom and Dad. You were right. And I went to college, but I was still super restless. So when I was a college junior sitting in a tan classroom, I was bored out of my mind, knowing that I needed to earn a degree, but also feeling like the life that I wanted and that was calling me was actually happening somewhere else. And specifically, that somewhere else was New York City. I didn't have a master plan, and actually, I had never even been to New York City. I simply knew that whenever I saw a show that was shot in New York or a book based in New York, that I needed to be there. That was where I had to go. I had read the Andy Warhol diaries twice, and I'm sure that had something to do with it. But really, of all the places in the world, the only place calling me was New York. And this is one of the first things that I learned about ambition. You do not need to see the entire path before you start moving in the direction that you've been drawn to. So one day, a woman named Rebecca came into my advertising class. She was from the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City. When I learned where she was from, literally nothing else mattered. She had red hair like mine and told our class that she could help connect interested students with summer internships in the city. But before she completely finished her sentence, my hand was in the air. I was like, me. I may have said it more than once, and I may have waved my hand around enough to concern other people sitting next to me. But I needed Rebecca to understand something. I was ready. I had to be there. And I knew exactly where I wanted to intern, which was Interview Magazine, my favorite magazine in the entire world that was started by Andy Warhol a couple decades earlier. I knew I had big things to do in my life, and above all else, I felt like I was meant to be only in that city. I just didn't know how to make the transition on my own. I knew Rebecca was the one, however, that would help me connect my current life with my next chapters. After class, she and I started talking. I wanted her to know that my enthusiasm, it wasn't temporary, it wasn't fleeting. I was totally focused, I was totally serious, and I was willing to do the work to get to New York. So then I called Interview Magazine. I just opened the magazine, looked at the masthead, called the receptionist, and I was very polite. I explained that I loved Andy Warhol and that I would gladly accept an internship in any department if it meant I could be there. The receptionist kept telling me that the following summer's internships were filled, but I called back again and I asked for somebody else. I had no idea why I did this, but I just knew I needed to get there, which is an important distinction here. I wasn't asking for other people to create my future for me. I was showing them that I was willing to show up for it. Finally, the production department at Interview agreed to meet with me. At the time, the offices at Interview Magazine were in Soho, near Spring and Mercer Streets, a neighborhood of cobblestone streets, historic cast iron buildings, fashion shoots in alleyways, and the kind of New York beauty that already felt so cinematic to me. I walked into the office that first day for my interview, and I honestly didn't know whether I was nervous, excited, or simply operating on another planet, but the entire experience felt super surreal. I told the receptionist I was there for my meeting, and she said that while I waited, I should go look in the library. Okay, I said, thank you. I walked into the library and found myself surrounded by every issue of Interview Magazine that was ever printed, hundreds and hundreds of issues. These enormous pages were filled with music and color, ideas, extraordinary interviews, fashion spreads, photography, art, and conversations I could almost hear jumping out of the magazines. And all I could think was, Andy Warhol must have touched some of these issues. And honestly, if that had been the only thing that happened that day, I might have walked right out feeling completely fulfilled. Then, from somewhere inside this magical moment, I heard, Julie? And I turned around and saw a woman in her 20s who introduced herself and led me further into the office. Now, keep in mind, I was only 18 or 19 years old at the time. I passed the offices of editors and writers whose work I had been reading for years. Ingrid Sishi, Graham Fuller, Dmitry Ehrlich. The list went on, and I could not believe what was happening. I wanted to be a part of this magazine more than anything. And as I was trying to take it all in, the woman from the production department began explaining what the internship involved. She said, so this is what we do. We assemble the magazine. It's not necessarily the most creative part, but every placement has to be perfect. And I was immediately like, done. I love it. I would love to assemble the magazine. I would love to help anyone with anything at this magazine. I would have carried those boxes, organized pages, made copies, gotten coffee. I didn't care. And honestly, I think at the end, I ended up doing all of them. But I simply wanted to be a part of this world. And I was genuinely so grateful just to be meeting her. So she offered me the internship on the spot for the following summer. I was stunned. I wanted this so badly, and suddenly she was telling me that I was coming back. I walked out of the office, past the library, and made my way back down to Spring Street where my mom was waiting for me. I got the internship, I screamed. We hugged and jumped up and down together in the middle of the sidewalk. That moment is still so vivid to me because ambition can sometimes look very serious from the outside, which many people think it is. But on the inside, it can look like you and your mother jumping up and down on a New York City sidewalk because someone had just given you the first real opportunity of your life. So the following summer, in advance of my internship, I moved to an NYU dorm on 3rd Avenue and 12th Street. That detail matters because a dorm is filled with students from all over the country who had come to New York for internships of their own. Honestly, it may have been one of the greatest environments for meeting people that I've ever experienced, and I did. In my dorm room alone, I believe there were like 8 women sharing 3 rooms. And the rooms weren't very big. Most of them were students from Spelman College, with the exception of my roommate and myself. We had all come from different places in the country, but we were united by the fact that we had somehow made it to New York City on a summer break and landed the summer internships we had all been dreaming about. Everyone was standing in the beginning of something, and being surrounded by all of that energy and possibility expanded my idea of what my own life could become. That summer in New York changed my life. I worked at the magazine during the day, and at night I explored the city with all of my new friends from the dorm. One night I went to a rooftop party, and on the roof across the street from me was a painting with Jean-Michel Basquiat that could only be seen from where we were standing. Even the city seemed to be revealing secrets piece by piece to me and to us. Most people in the dorm became instant friends. And at the very beginning, I noticed one guy with long brown hair who walked around wearing enormous DJ-style headphones on every single day. I didn't know what he was listening to or why he was there or why he was in New York in general, but I only knew that he clearly loved music so much that he never took off his earphones. And there's another lesson that's carried with me. Put yourself in environments where the thing you wanted feels possible. Environment matters. The people around you matter. And when you place yourself in rooms filled with curiosity, creativity, and momentum, your imagination starts to grow. On my first day in New York, David Bowie rode his bicycle past me on Prince Street. "I am staying," I yelled to the people standing next to me on the sidewalk. They said, "Great." And they crossed the street. And I had been in the city for approximately 5 minutes at that point. But something in me already knew that I had arrived in the place that I was supposed to be. I loved being trusted with assignments. I loved being asked to listen to demo music that was sent to the magazine, to give my thoughts to the music editor, as though the entire future of the band rested on my 19-year-old opinion. I introduced myself to everybody I met because I was the happiest person on planet Earth in that city. I walked through the streets listening to music as though the city itself had a soundtrack playing beneath every person, every building, and every experience I encountered. I asked questions. I expressed gratitude. I tried to absorb everything around me all the time, both at work and throughout the city. And I would wander into music rehearsals, even accidentally sometimes I stumbled upon in the afternoon, like the Blue Note, random bars, restaurants, people setting up for the evening. The city was alive. My days were filled with knowledge and inspiration and wisdom that I simply didn't have before. And I learned that asking for something does not guarantee that someone will say yes, but staying silent definitely guarantees that they won't. Cut to the next scene. 2 months later, the summer was coming to an end. Then came my last scheduled day in New York at the NYU dorms. I was super sad. I'd packed all my bags and I had a flight back to Buffalo that afternoon, which is where I grew up. I was walking out of the dorm to get a coffee when I saw that boy with the long brown hair and headphones sitting in the lobby. I'd seen him around all summer, but I'd never spoken to him because he always had those headphones on. And I assumed I probably would never see him again. So I thought, what do I have to lose? I walked over to him. I sat down and I said, "Hi, I like music too." He looked surprised. He took off his headphones for the first time all summer. And he said, "Cool," or something similar to that. And we just started talking. He told me his name is Carrie. He was from Nashville and he had spent the summer interning at MTV and living at the NYU dorms as well. And I told him that I wanted to intern at MTV more than anything in the entire world, which at that point in my life was completely true. MTV represented everything that excited me: music, comedy, youth culture, creativity, original voices, people making things that have never existed before. It was the one place. And so Carrie and I talked for about 10 minutes. And at some point during the conversation, he offered to pass my resume along to the person who coordinated the internships at MTV. I was speechless. I was like, "Wait, really?" And he was like, "Yeah, no problem." So I thanked him, although thank you did not come close to expressing the gratitude of what I really felt. Carrie didn't know me. We had never spoken before in our lives. And maybe it was simply what happens when people are young and open and optimistic and willing to do something kind for a complete stranger. But that kindness changed the trajectory of my life. Talk to people. Ask questions. Be interested. Be friendly. Not because every person you meet is going to do something for you, because honestly, most won't. But every authentic interaction expands your world just a little bit. And occasionally, one of those interactions opens a door that you would have never found on your own. So back to that moment, I handed Carrie my resume. "Thank you," I said, but those words did not begin to capture the enormity of what was happening. I was scheduled to fly home later that day, and as I was preparing to leave, I received a call from Jeanette Primus, the internship coordinator at MTV. She told me that she had received my resume from Carrie and that she loved Carrie, and that all of her regular internship positions were already filled for the next semester. That could have been the end of the conversation. I could have said, "Okay, I understand. Thank you anyway," and hung up the phone. But I didn't want that moment to end, and so I asked her another question. "Well, I'm still in New York today, and I'd love to see the MTV offices and meet you. I mean, you have been so nice. Would that be possible?" And to my surprise, she said yes. And promptly, I canceled my flight. And here's something I wish more people understood. No is not always the end of a story. Sometimes no simply means not this way, not this time, not this exact form you originally imagined. A rejected idea might lead to another idea. A lost opportunity might point you 5 degrees in a different direction, and you'll still move forward. You should always respect someone's answer, but do not end your own story because the other person has actually ended it for you. And ask the next thoughtful question. So the following day, I walked into the MTV offices at 1515 Broadway wearing a brand new Betsy Johnson dress. The offices were on the 23rd floor and overlooked all of Times Square. There were enormous, colorful monitors. Music filled every open space. The walls were filled with neon color, light, graphics, and imagery. The people walking around the halls were the coolest and the most creative people I've ever seen in my entire life. And once again, I had this overwhelming feeling that I was somewhere I was supposed to be. I knew it in my gut. I knew it in my soul. I felt as though everything I had done in my life had somehow led me to that room, and then the office door opened. A young woman with bright yellow hair and blue platform shoes called out, "Julie Kellman," which was my maiden name. Yes. So I followed Jeanette's assistant into Jeanette's office. So Jeanette was so sweet. She had posters covering her walls, her own adorable Betsy Johnson dress, and a huge welcoming smile. She even showed me her wedding dress that she was planning to wear just a few weeks later, which I'll always remember. It was hanging on the back of her door. I thanked her for taking the time to meet with me, and I told her that I understood that the internship positions were filled for next semester. And once again, that could have been the end of the conversation. But I asked her one more question, and this was maybe the most important question I've ever asked. Would it be possible for me to intern over the holiday break? I'm free and I could just, help you guys. She paused and then she said, "Well, we don't usually have interns over the holiday break." And she paused again, "But okay." I was like, "Really?" She's like, "Yeah, it would only be for 3 weeks between semesters. Are you still interested in doing something like that?" Yes, I am. I attempted to remain grounded and professional, but inside I was definitely freaking out. I walked out of the MTV offices and spun around on the sidewalk like Mary Tyler Moore, like just so happy. I just couldn't even believe how fortunate I was at that moment, and I probably looked ridiculous. But this meant that I wasn't leaving New York forever. I was coming back, and this time I was coming back to MTV. And that 3-week internship became 6 months because Jeanette asked me to stay for the spring semester after all. And those 6 months became 8 years when I was ultimately hired onto staff. But here's the part of the story that really matters. The open door did not just do the work for me. The door had only opened a crack, but I could not let that moment go. I still had to prove that I belonged there. So when I was given an assignment, I completed it. Then I asked for what I could do next. When there was downtime, I looked for ways to contribute. I brought in ideas. I paid attention to talent. I tried to understand not only what people were asking me to do, but why they needed it so I could anticipate the next questions. I tried to make the people around me more successful. An internship should not be passive observation of other people's careers. It's an opportunity to begin constructing your own. Be useful, be curious, be gracious, and take the work seriously. I didn't arrive to New York with any money, connections, or an easy path. I literally didn't know anybody in New York when I got there. At one point, my friend from college, Debbie, and I shared a mattress on the floor of someone's loft in Greenwich Village because it was all we could afford. We literally shared the mattress of the same small loft. I once repaired the heel of my boot with duct tape before walking into a job interview and just simply prayed that the interviewer wouldn't notice. Dreams can look very glamorous from a distance, but up close, sometimes they look like duct tape. And I'm not suggesting that everyone should romanticize suffering, which I wasn't suffering, but the duct tape was a memory. But at the beginning, it's often messy. You're probably going to be underpaid and you may feel uncertain. You may look around the room and wonder whether everyone has secretly made a terrible mistake by allowing you inside. That is called imposter syndrome, and we're all really familiar with it. And it's also bullshit. You're in that room for a reason. Now learn everything you can and do the work. Experience creates confidence. Confidence creates success. You do not need to wait until you feel confident to begin. You begin before you feel ready. The experience comes first. The confidence then follows. And eventually, your confidence becomes louder than your fear. My years at MTV gave me the foundation for almost everything that followed. I worked with some of the smartest and most creative people in the world. I met the man I would eventually marry and have children with. I made friendships that shaped my life. And I had professional experiences that the younger version of me sitting in that college classroom could not have dreamed of in 1,000 years. But during all 8 of my years at MTV, Carrie, the boy with brown hair, never shut up again. In the meantime, I kept working, meeting people, and moving forward. And over those years, I learned so many lessons. The first, work first, friendships can follow. Be discreet because loose lips sink ships. Give people the credit, respect, and compensation they deserve. Do not allow someone else's brilliance to intimidate you out of contributing your own. Everyone in the room has a voice, including you. The most senior executive may have the experience, but the brand new intern may see something that no one else can see. Be the person that creates enough safety for both of them to contribute. Be grateful. Thank people for their time. Make people feel seen. And remember that everybody involved in a project really does want it to succeed. Help them get there. Eventually, I left MTV. I started a production company with my then husband. We moved to Los Angeles and launched our company there. A lot of life happened inside that sentence, but I'll save that for another episode. And cut to the next scene. Approximately 10 years later, my company was doing well. We had offices in Hollywood, and I was sitting at my desk preparing for a new project about independent music. I was fascinated by the fact that people were beginning to make music from their bedrooms and releasing it on their own without a label. It was the beginning of the digital music era, and several publicity companies had sent me material about musicians who might be right for the project. I was looking through the headshots when one of the photographs took my breath away. I stopped everything. The hair was shorter, but the face was the same, and suddenly I was back to the lobby of the NYU dorms. The name on the page was Carey Brothers. Carey was a boy from Nashville, the one with the long brown hair and the headphones, the one who had passed my resume to MTV. I was like speechless. You see, after that summer in New York, Carey had not continued pursuing a career in television. He moved to Los Angeles and followed his first love, which was music. No surprise there. His song Blue Eyes appeared on the Grammy-winning Garden State movie soundtrack, and his music went on to appear throughout the film and television landscape, reaching millions and millions of people. I had spent years wondering what happened to him, and suddenly, there he was, sitting on my desk. The publicist gave me his email address, and I thought there was absolutely no way he would remember me because, after all, we had spoken for only 10 minutes, almost a decade earlier. But once again, I thought, what do I have to lose? So I emailed him. I reintroduced myself and asked whether he remembered the conversation we had in the lobby all those years ago. And then I told him what happened after he passed along my resume. I told him that his one act of kindness had led to an internship, and that internship had become a job, and that job had created a lifetime of friendships, relationships, and professional experiences. I told him that thank you didn't feel remotely big enough, but I needed him to know that what he had done mattered to someone he barely knew. I sent the email without expecting a response, but later that night, Carrie wrote back. Of course he remembered. I think I cried when I got the email, to be honest, because it just meant so much to me, this one moment in my life. And a few days later, he invited me to one of his shows. And after almost a decade, I finally had the chance to thank him in person. For Carrie, forwarding my resume may have felt like no big deal, but for me, it changed everything. It created a foundation for what my life would become. And that is part of the Ambition Code too. Ambition is not only about what you build for yourself, but it's also about what you make possible for other people. Someone might remember an act of generosity that you barely remember doing, an introduction, a recommendation, a resume being forwarded, a few encouraging words, 10 minutes of your time. You may never know what happens after you hold the door for someone else, but hold it anyway and open it wide. And here's what makes the story even more meaningful to me now, is that conversation in New York represented a fork in the road for both of our lives. Carrie helped send me to MTV, but ultimately he walked away from that path and chose music. I know what happened to me after those 10 minutes, and I have always wanted to know what happened to him. What made him leave one dream and follow another? Because he could have easily stayed at MTV. Did he know that music would become his life? What did his own beginning look like? And what does it feel like to discover that a small act of kindness changed the life of someone you barely knew? In part 2 of this episode, Carrie Brothers is joining me to tell his side of the story. And for the first time, we're going to trace our two lives that unfolded after one conversation in the lobby of the NYU dorm. But before we close part 1, I wanted to return to the young woman I was when all of this happened. I thought that was at the beginning of my career, and that only happened once. And I thought it was that summer, that internship, that meeting, that extraordinary moment when I walked into MTV and felt that I'd found the place where I belonged. Now I know that life gives us many beginnings. And since then, I have produced so many things. I've worked at networks and streamers. I've launched companies. I became a mother of 2 extraordinary sons. I built things. I lost things. I closed one chapter of my professional life and questioned what I wanted the next one to become. And I kept moving. The Ambition Code is another beginning. This podcast exists because I still believe that our stories can become roadmaps for other people. I am still learning. I'm still evolving. We all are. Your life does not wait for you at one single finish line. It waits for you every time you stand at the edge of something new and choose movement over fear. So raise your hand, make the call, say hello, ask the second question. And if the path closes, shift 5 degrees and keep moving forward in that new direction. When a door cracks open, run through it. Learn everything, be gracious, trust your instincts, and when you finally reach a place where you can open the door for someone else, hold it wide open. Because a conversation that lasts 10 minutes can change a person's life, and you might not even find out until 10 years later. Your life is waiting for you. Thank you for joining us on the Ambition Code. I hope this conversation gave you the inspiration, clarity, and momentum to run through every open door in your life. The Ambition Code is created and executive produced by me, Julie Kellman Reading. Please like, subscribe, and tell us what you think, and remember, your life is waiting for you.